So, of the 3% of the population made up by Indigenous people, half of the 10 to 17-year-olds in juvenile detention are Indigenous. Adolescent Aboriginals are 16 times more likely to be incarcerated compared to non-Indigenous adolescents, and 95% of Aboriginals are affected in some way by suicide. Why do you personally think these are so high?
Mental health in the Aboriginal communities is really, really high. It's a high portion within the community, in a very, very small portion of the whole of the Australian population. Education, lack of support, family support, alcoholism, drug abuse, dysfunctional families, disjointed families. A lot of the elders in the communities are still carrying around a lot of anger and bitterness towards the stolen generation. And they haven't been able to deal with their own mental health issues, which has actually been exacerbated by coming out in their youth. They're lost souls, a lot of these kids, because the whole communities have broken down. So it's extremely important that kids, particularly in primary and secondary school, early secondary school, can know about these services available, that if they're feeling this way, if they're feeling suicidal, if they're being influenced by family members, friends to get into drugs and alcohol abuse, and to break the law, they need to get in there. And they need to know that these services are available.
Yeah. So our program's goal is to try and educate people on the dangers of mental health and equip them with the skills and knowledge of how to help the younger generations to come. Why do you think this would benefit, especially within the school communities?
Okay, as I said before, if the kids know these services are available, kids don't want to be bad, kids don't want to do the wrong thing, regardless of whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. So if they know these services are available, and if they know they can go and talk without fear of retribution, that's a big thing in the Indigenous community, the fear of getting into trouble from the white fella, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's carried over from the guilt of generations beforehand.
Yeah.
So if they know it's available, if it's freely accessible, and it'll be used.
Yeah. Okay. So what services are available here to help these young children if they are suffering from mental health?
In this particular school, we have a counsellor. Most of the staff here are extremely open to kids coming to talk to them. I'm actually employed as an Indigenous education officer. I'm fairly close to the kids. We've got 45 Indigenous kids identified at this school.
Mm-hmm.
We run groups, we get cultural groups, we have the community come in, the elders, the Biripi people in this community come in here, teach the kids. We teach them about being able to talk, and if things are worrying them, if things are happening at home, this is a safe environment for them.
Yeah. Do you believe any more should be done to help these kids out if they're getting affected at such a young age, or?
I think it's a whole community problem, not just this school, not just this town or one local area. It's a whole community problem.
Yeah.
It's something that needs to be addressed on a local, state and federal level, but you can't just keep throwing money into a pit and hope it'll fix itself.
Yeah. At such a young age, do you believe that, for example, the children you work with and you see at the school, they have the capacity to come up and deal with problems in mental health?
Some do. Some need some guidance. Some need some support. Most of them, they can see, and they're upset. They can see what's happening within their families. They can feel the way they're being encouraged to speak about their feelings. I think there's always opportunities for more support for them and to help them out. And I think it needs to be a community thing, whole-based community thing, that all these services work together.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to, what do you see as the most common factor contributing to these kids developing some sort of mental illness?
The most common factor probably within the Indigenous community, unfortunately, is still alcohol and drug abuse, which leads to family breakdown, which leads to family members being incarcerated. And it's a vicious circle, and it needs to be, that circle needs to be stopped, and the support needs to be offered to stop it.
How do you recommend that we stop it? Just offering services?
Offering services, education is a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm a very proud Warramai woman. I was taught at a very, very young age that education is the only way you'll get anywhere in life. And that doesn't matter whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. A lot of the Indigenous communities, it's still, we don't want to upset the Indigenous community, so we won't push that. That's my personal belief anyway. I believe if more was done to encourage education and getting these kids to go on to tertiary education, at least complete secondary education, I think they make a huge difference.
Do you believe that Aboriginal children are still being stereotyped and this could affect their mental illness?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yep.
Most definitely. You look around the areas here, there's certain areas in Port Macquarie, Kempsey's a prime example, that if there's any crime that happens, it's automatically, the whole community thinks, oh, it's the Indigenous community, that's somebody from that community's done it. Yes, they're stereotyped. And it's just the way it is. And I think the only way to get out of that too is education. And that's for Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians.
Yeah, very true. Oh, well, that's about it. I think
No
you've
worries.
answered everything perfectly
Answered
for
everything.
me.
Yeah, and
that
look,
was
it's on
good.
Sorry Day. How better does
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.